What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the debut mixtape and project by the singer The Weeknd. Now basically, I have yet to really talk about The Weeknd on Acid Roots. He's kind of one of my favorites. He's definitely one that I hold with a lot of esteem, and he's definitely one of the central R&B artists that I feel like has come out of the past 10 or 15 years or so. And he's had influence. Lots of R&B has been influenced by The Weeknd. This particular project, House of Balloons, was particularly revolutionary and just overall kind of heralded just in a lot of ways. It did a lot of things right, and it kind of shifted like some tides throughout 2010s R&B and such, because I feel like things like I feel like T-Pain and Akon and Trey songs in some cases were one thing, even Usher. But once this project came out, it kind of helped introduce like the Spotify and more streaming heavy and just kind of sprawling type tunes that just had a lot of distortion and lengthy singing throughout that sort of thing. It's just kind of, I mean, this may not be the absolute project responsible, but things like this, House of Balloons, Kanye West, 808s and Heartbreak, Drake's So Far Gone, some of those type records, Drake's Take Care, that just had like a lot of effectual type stuff as far as revolutionizing 2010s R&B, and it's something I don't talk about enough. But I do want to say, because I have yet to really talk about The Weeknd, that he is someone that I listen to often. I guess I just kind of held on to like his music and was going to save it, but I think now would be better than ever to start messing with it. I don't like the concept of supposedly The Weeknd retiring. I don't like that concept. He definitely needs to stick around and continue to do more music, because a lot of these, you'll find that eventually, as we start to review more of these The Weeknd projects, you're going to see that he has like quite a few he has quite a few skilled songs throughout some of these projects. This one in particular is going to get a rave score, and I would have to say on top of that, it's free music. So really, you can get it. I don't know if it's still available. I downloaded it back in the day. I It's been a while since I checked to see if this mixtape is still available for download, but later the Weeknd put out an album called Trilogy, which had all three of his original mixtapes plus three new songs on each mixtape, and that dropped in 2012. So I don't know if that just replaced like the House of Balloons trilogy being on there, but this is kind of the concept. You might still be able to find it, but this is a pretty excellent project. I just would have to say The Weeknd really kicked some things off, and this had a lot to do with like the movement that would later be on SoundCloud and Spotify and some of those kind of more internet heavy kind of social media type presences as far as that kind of went. But this is just kind of in the early stages, where this was late 2010, early 2011, late 2010, early 2011, when Instagram and Spotify weren't really heavily around like that, and just that kind of concept is just kind of in the early stages of what would happen. But this is some good stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the singles here. Basically, The Weeknd, it seemed like he didn't really drop singles to this project until he re-released it as Trilogy in late 2012. So the two singles that came out from this project were Wicked Games and 28, which I just would have to kind of say Wicked Games in particular is a really nice one. I mean, it makes sense that this is the most effectual single by The Weeknd, just because a lot of these are kind of lengthy, distorted kind of tunes that just have very drug-addled basis about them. A lot of these are more than 4.5 or 5 minutes, so they are kind of lengthy in that sense, and they just kind of have some different kind of alternative R&B that was unlike the stuff that was kind of around. But picking upon it, I do feel like Wicked Games is a pretty solitary one to kind of kick off the Weeknd sound that would later be refurbished and refined completely throughout the mid-late 2010s. But I would have to say, in my opinion, I feel like Wicked Games is basically like penthouse and loft music. It just has a lot of fancy kind of loft apartment, kind of ritzy house music. I mean, it could be, I don't feel like it's like house music or like apartment music or that type of stuff. It just feels like something where there's going to be like three third story up in the air, fourth story, something like that, something with like a balcony or some sort of situation like that, just with like the kind of fancy fans that would be in a penthouse or loft, something like that. It's just kind of interesting. It really reminds me of like East Coast kind of type stuff, just someplace like Chicago or New York or Philadelphia, something like that, just to kind of be able to say how that actually kind of goes. Just really ritzy house music. It was difficult to kind of find club music on here. I feel like The Weeknd was kind of more interested in kind of refurbishing like the sounds. It kind of felt like The Weeknd was interested in refurbishing kind of the sounds that he was trending out rather than trying to focus on like the clubs and kind of getting women there and that type of stuff. It felt like he was kind of more content with just, if it is homely music, it's fancy homely music. So you can at least say, even if the Weeknd is a homebody, he does it in a rich sense, which kind of indicates the fact that he's not a square, despite the fact that he's not at the club 5 or 6 nights out the week or something. This is kind of the concept. But the second single is 28, and this is another nice one. This song, despite the fact that it's R&B and stuff, really reminds me of like a dusky kind of brooding song, very similar to Don't Speak by No Doubt. Just has that same kind of dusky kind of piano type beat that's on like that 1996 song Don't Speak and stuff, but it really is kind of a haunting and kind of brooding song. But the singing on here is really great. It just has a lot of powerful emphasis, and both of these just kind of have like some real kind of nice effectual feels. Now I feel like Wicked Games is a little bit more, I mean, that one's a night song, but it just has a lot more kind of jovial grace to it, but this one's a lot more haunting and brooding about it. This has a lot more bruised atmosphere towards it. But these are both two great singles to kind of kick off like the promotional spin of the project, despite the fact that I don't know how well these songs charted. I mean, The Weeknd really didn't fasten like his career until Beauty Behind the Madness in late 2015. So really his first few projects, Trilogy, the House of Balloons trilogy, and Kissland, all did not really strike even until he started hitting #1 left and right with Beauty Behind the Madness. But this is some pretty strong music. Even if these singles underperformed, it's still some pretty excellent stuff here. That just kind of happens to be a thing. But in terms of talking about the rest of the project, there's 10 songs on here. In terms of talking about the rest of the project, there's 10 songs on here, and I wound up recommending 8. I wound up recommending 8 songs out of 10, so I'm going to recommend those songs. Those songs are Wicked Games, High for This, What You Need, The Morning, The Knowing, Loft Music, the bonus track 28 if you have the Trilogy album, and then Coming Down, which was an almost song. So really, I guess it's 7.5 because Coming Down is an almost song for me. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of these. So I feel like High for This is a real nice kind of one. I mean, this High for This is a nice one here. I feel like this is nice balcony type music. Definitely distorted, but it still feels like contemporary kind of music. Just really kind of night oriented. I feel like the two songs that have that most night kind of feel towards them would be What You Need and High for This, in addition to Wicked Games. I mean, some of these are just really kind of getting ready to go out for the night, just starry sky kind of night type music, balcony loft music in like the evening time, that sort of stuff. But Wicked Games is more penthouse inside, but I feel like High for This is kind of more outdoors, just being in the grass or just on the balcony or something like that, one of those type moments. So it just really has like some tense kind of distorted R&B on there, but it's just an overall like evening based highlight, and it just has a lot of glossy kind of glitzy kind of production. It's the same thing with What You Need. Yeah, What You Need is just very tense and sultry, but it is a nice evening too, and I just kind of feel like this one is a little bit more insular and a little bit more kind of touchy than like High for This or Wicked Games, where it's a little bit more kind of rosy in the sense of being flirty and that type of stuff, but it works for what it is. The Morning is a nice pitch of morning kind of tune. It's just very groggy, and it just feels like it's not breakfast or getting ready to go out and go to work type tune, but just something probably like 2:45 a.m., 3:45 a.m., 4:15 before you have breakfast, before you're starting to get dressed and that type of stuff and get ready to go on with your day and that sort of thing. It just kind of has that particular kind of tune. I just would have to say it just, I like the pitch. It just really felt like this is a brilliant kind of song for this like the morning kind of fanfare. I feel like some songs do it, but you have to kind of find them yourself. I do like the concept of the Weeknd being able to have like this kind of powerful kind of low-key distorted guitar keys on there that kind of work for the morning. It's just kind of an awkward one, but as far as like 3:45 a.m., it's just a nice pitch for that. The Knowing is like a powerful R&B, power R&B type tune. Definitely in the after hours. It's very sprawling and Spotify induced, despite the fact that I'm not sure if Spotify was really around back in early 2011 and stuff, but it just really kind of has like this the sense of like a power, like if you've heard power pop and some of those type tunes, pop rock and power rock, some of that, this is power R&B, so it just really has that. The Weeknd has some powerful vocals on here. He comes up with some great melodies and some great kind of melodies in the verses and some great hooks. So he does a lot of stuff. The Knowing has a great hook. I feel like Coming Down kind of does. It's at least an earworm, even if it's not the most addictive hook on here. Wicked Games is an excellent hook. The Morning's pretty good. What You Need is an excellent one. High for This is an excellent one. I mean, just some of these just kind of, it's hats off to the Weeknd in terms of the quality of these kind of R&B hooks that he delivers. I mean, a lot of these, I mean, he's up there with T-Pain and Bruno Mars as far as being able to deliver some stellar hooks overall. He just nailed that so many times. But yeah, The Knowing is power R&B. Loft Music is another loft tune besides like Wicked Games. This one's a little bit more kind of relaxed in the loft. It's definitely airy music. It just kind of floats around, and later in the song, The Weeknd just kind of does some kind of distorted and kind of relatively sing-songy type stuff. It's not really so much lyrics, just as much as like ad libs throughout the rest of the song for the last 3.5 or so minutes of the song. It's a lengthy song, Loft Music, but he just does like some ad libs, some R&B ad libs towards the last 3.5 minutes of the song, and it just really works pretty well. I mean, normally I don't like lengthy songs, but I feel like this is an example of one that just nailed it. And there are some other lengthy songs on here that kind of don't do the ad libbing like Loft Music, but we'll get to that when I complain about it. Like I said, 28 is a very dusky, brooding kind of song, similar to Don't Speak from No Doubt. And then Coming Down, the reason why this song is an almost song is it's a club song. I feel like this is the only real club song on the project, even though I guess Wicked Games could probably be a club song also, just because it was the single and it's powerful enough, despite the fact that it's penthouse music. You know, there can be some fancy clubs that can feel like a penthouse or something. But I feel like Coming Down is just like a nice kind of club song, very hazy and druggy, and it kind of has like this part in the song that just keeps repeating. It has like this kind of weird kind of piano or distorted key lick in the song that happens like every 5 or 8 or 10 seconds or something, and it works for what it is, but it just is very hazy and druggy, and it took me a little while. It took me a little while to be able to figure out what that sort of pitch about the song kind of was. And I just kind of see it as just going out to a club, kind of being a little bit hazed out, flirting, that sort of stuff, but just kind of in like a real druggy sense where you're kind of half there, half not, just kind of like, hey, you know, I'm getting ready to have a good night, but at the same time, I'm feeling it. You know, just that sort of stuff. It's just one of those type tunes for that sort of concept. But I feel like the reason why it's an almost song is if you're not drunk or something or kind of hazed out, something like that, it kind of, the beat is a little bit kind of grating. I mean, it's not wholesomely grating, but it wears thin more so than the rest of the production on the project. I think it just kind of has a learning curve. So that's why I gave it an almost song. But yeah, it kind of happens to be the thing. So in terms of the songs I didn't like, the only two songs I didn't like were just House of Balloons, the title track, which also is combined with Glass Table Girls, and then The Party and the After Party, which both of these songs were too lengthy. They switched up the beat towards the end, and they just didn't have very connected singing. Like, these are the two duds out of the whole project. Nine, or if you get the regular 9 edition or the 10-song edition, these are the ones with the least effective kind of composure and execution overall. I just feel like The Party and the After Party, I liked what it was trying to do, but the After Party side of the song was just not quite as interesting in terms of the production and just the overall emphasis behind it. And I didn't like the kind of split song. I feel like House of Balloons and Glass Table Girl should have just been two separate songs. It just would have worked better, so you could have decided if you wanted to listen to one or the other. I just have never really been too much of a fan when two songs are kind of in one song. I just don't really like that concept. But those are like the only two duds. And then, you know, just talking about how Coming Down just kind of has a learning curve. That's about the only other thing about it, just to be able to say that it is a good song, but it just kind of takes some getting used to. So, me liking 7.5 songs out of 10, I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a 9.5 out of 10. I really feel like if I had liked completely Coming Down, I would have given it a 10 out of 10 because there would have only been two songs that I didn't like. And I feel like, that's good and that's close enough to like a classic in my sense, but it just gets a 9.5 just because it almost nailed it. I just feel like 2.5 songs that just could have really been trimmed, or at least, yeah, just trimmed in length, and just overall had a little bit more thorough execution as far as what they were trying to do. But mine is just like a couple blunders. This is pretty state of the art R&B. If it's still free, I would definitely recommend downloading it if you haven't by this point, because this is an overall class act and this has some overall great moments. And the social score is going to get a 10, just because a lot of this, between the fact that it's free, between the fact that it just has a lot of good social kind of outings, despite the fact that the Weeknd is not necessarily like the most club hopping kind of pub crawling type individual. He still knows how to have a good time. He gets fucked up. He's not like a sober square type individual, and he just overall has a good time with these great melodies and good R&B kind of sultry, racy, rosy kind of tunes and stuff. So it just kind of happens to be a thing. So definite 10 social. In terms of the future, like the Weeknd just came out with a project with Mike Dean. So Mike Dean was an affiliate of Kanye West. I at least know that, but he gave Mike Dean like 4 songs on his most recent album. And then the Weeknd put out Dawn FM in 2022, and he's supposedly working on some more stuff. I hope the guy doesn't retire because he has some excellent things here. But yeah, we just have to support these projects. But yeah, this is some good stuff. 9.5 out of 10.